Welcome back to another episode of The Welcome Table with Sydney
and Tatum.
And today we're going to be talking to Lynnette Khalfani-Cox. Lynnette is an alumna of the UCI School of Humanities, a former Wall Street reporter for CNBC, creator of the brand The Money Coach, and owner of the publishing company Advantage World Press. She is also the best-selling author and a famed journalist whose work has been featured in Essence, Health and Black Enterprise magazine, just to name a few. So with an introduction like that, we're so excited to be talking to you,
Lynnette. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you for being here. And before we start out all of our interviews, we like to do a little show and tell so our audience can get to know us a little better. And we will go first this week. So I brought one of my most recent bookstore finds. I like to go to bookstores and thrift stores and just peruse their record section. And I'm a great fan of jazz, and I'm also a great fan of powerful women who pioneered within the field of jazz. And so when I found this, I was like, I need to have it because it has all my girls, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Lena Horne, and also Sarah Vaughan. And yeah, when I saw this was $10.99, I was like, that is a steal. So I'm gonna pick it up. So I've been enjoying this a lot, and I consider this a treasure. So that's why I wanted to bring this.
Wow, a treasure indeed, an affordable treasure, not to mention
Right?
four very iconic women. So great find there.
Thank you. Yeah, and then what did you bring this week?
Well, I brought this lovely scarf, and it's so long, I don't even know how much you can see, but I'm gonna open it up just to make it a little more visible. This kind of left to right. So it has a gourd on there, multiple gourds. It has bells. And honestly, I can't even tell you where it was originally created, but I can tell you for whom it was created and how I got it. It was actually something that I inherited. It came from my husband's grandmother, and she passed away, unfortunately, in 2012. But this scarf was something that Nana had for many, 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 many years. And then, of course, it got passed along to me. And I use it, I tie my hair down with it and everything. But every time I see it, it makes me think of her, somebody who was instrumental, certainly in my husband's life and raising him. And it just makes me think about legacy, more or less. And it's something I'm gonna pass along to my daughter, Alexis. I actually have two daughters, but to Alexis in particular, our youngest. I think we all need to remember sort of the ties that bind us in a lot of different ways. And this scarf is kind of symbolic of that to me.
That's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I guess going right into our first question, speaking of your legacy, you've had such a rich and varied career. We wanted to know what brought you to the point that you're at today. And a more pointed question would be, what was life like after completing your undergrad at UCI?
Well, really, in a lot of ways, I kind of stumbled into my career. I certainly cannot say that I mapped it all out while I was in school, not at all. You know, I think some people do have this, plan, this idea like A is going to happen, then B, and then C, and it kind of goes down the road. And it's nice if your life takes that trajectory. Mine certainly did not. Mm-hmm. I got into financial journalism after doing a stint in mainstream media in Los Angeles. I started as an intern for the Associated Press, and then I became a reporter there. And then I went to two other organizations, the Philadelphia Inquirer out on the East Coast in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and working for Fox, the 10 o'clock news. But from those positions, I kind of sprungboard into financial journalism. And you could not have told me when I was in college that I would have been writing for the Wall Street Journal or reporting for CNBC, because I certainly did not know a stock from a bond or had any kind of background in financial matters whatsoever. So I kind of stumbled into it, but I certainly looked at my education, my undergraduate education and my graduate school education as really fertile training ground to help me to propel towards the career that I've built now these last couple decades, one that's been just immensely satisfying.
Right, of course. And I guess we're going to learn about how you got interested in like finance, right? Because that's, again, like you said, that was such a sharp career switch. So yeah.
Well, I didn't initially get interested in financial journalism itself. Again, as I say, I kind of stumbled into it because I was in the mainstream media as a general assignment reporter. I was working as a correspondent for the Philadelphia Inquirer when some of my friends there in Philadelphia said, oh, let's go to a job conference at Newsday. And this was in New York City. And again, having moved from Southern California to the East Coast, I was thinking like, I live in Philadelphia. Why would I want to go to a job conference in New York where there's, New York based employers? I'm not going to be, passing through 2 states every single day just to go to work. The thought of like traveling from Philadelphia to New York every day was just like preposterous to me. But my friends said, no, this is the East Coast. Everybody's really mobile here. You can hop on a train and like, an hour and a half, we'll zoom on up there and you'll be there. Yeah. So I did. I went to this job conference and then I wound up getting a job with Dow Jones and Company, which was the parent company of the Wall Street Journal. And I was working initially for Dow Jones Newswires. But I should say, honestly, that it really did start at UC Irvine because when I went to college, I was raised in Los Angeles. And at the time, you could apply to 2 UC schools. And so I applied to UC Berkeley and to UC Irvine, and I got into both. And if I'm honest, I was like, yes, I'm going to Berkeley. Yeah. If I'm honest, I was like, I'm going to Berkeley. And then I had a mentor and from high school and my mom, they were both like, no, you should go to UC Irvine. And they really pushed for UC Irvine. Mm-hmm. And my mom just kind of looked at me and said, why wouldn't you want to go to UCI? They have a great bio-sci department. And I was like, biological sciences, Mom, what are you talking about? And it goes, don't you want to be a doctor? And I said, Mom, I told you that when I was like 5 years old. Oh my God. You've been paying attention. Like, what's happened since then? Mm-hmm. And so we went around and around, and I did decide on UC Irvine. And the compromise was that I was absolutely not going to be a bio major, which is what she wanted me to do. But the compromise was that I would go in as an undeclared student, mm-hmm. and that I would kind of find my way and I would see what, sparked my passions. Mm-hmm. And so freshman year, I took a varieties of humanities courses. I took my core course requirements, etc. And it was fine. I had a great year. But then in my sophomore year, I took a journalism class. Mm. And honestly, it was one of only 2 courses, I believe at the time, that were offered. Mm. And I took one journalism class and I was like, oh my God, this is it. Oh yeah. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is absolutely it. And so I was like, sign me up. I want to be a journalism major. Mm-hmm. And then, so I went to my advisor and I was like, okay, I want to declare my major. I want to be a journalism major. And they were like, no, we actually don't have a journalism degree that we offer here. We don't have a school of journalism. And I was like, what? And so they were like, well, the closest thing is, an English major. You can certainly, be an English major and you can do this and that. So I did. I chose an English major. And really, when I thought about it, when I was in high school, I was, really quite an avid reader. Obviously, I was an excellent writer. I always got A's in English. And so it kind of lent itself towards my natural talents. Mm-hmm. But after taking that journalism class, I was so stoked and wanting to do so much more that I was like, oh, I should go write for the school newspaper. So I went to the New U and said, I want to, be a reporter here. I want to write. And they were like, okay, well, show us your clips. And I said, I don't really have any clips. I don't really have any, So I'll never forget one of the editors there said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I want you to go out and go cover this student protest and write about it and come back here and give it to me today. And then I was like, okay, I'll do it. And even though secretly I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? I was like, yes, I'm going to go out there and do it. So I did. I just went out there and I covered this protest and I came back in and brought it to him. And he was like, this is really good. This is, you know, so I started writing for the New You. That's how I actually started there. Awesome. And that is what took me on the trajectory towards journalism. So, you know, after UC Irvine, I went to USC and I did get a master's degree in journalism. And it was a tripartite curriculum. My emphasis was broadcast journalism, but I really studied broadcast, print, and public relations. Okay. So again, I do give a lot of credit to my roots at UC Irvine and to the really quite wonderful experiences that I had as an undergraduate to write, to learn, to be a TA, to not only get the opportunity to work for the New You, but to also work for Umoja, the African American Student Union's magazine at the time. So it all started there at UC Irvine. And, you know, even though I, you know, young and dumb as I was at the time, and I use that expression to talk about sometimes when you're immature and you don't quite know what to do, or you don't quite know what path would be best for you. I'm thinking like, oh yeah, Berkeley is definitely going to be it. And actually UC Irvine turned out to be the perfect place for me.
Wow, I love that.
That's amazing. And that led you all throughout your career. And it actually led you to winning 2 awards from the Dow Jones Company, the Dow Jones International News Award, and for your reporting for fraud, money fraud, and also Wall Street trends. And that leads us to our next question. What inspired you to help people understand the intricacies and also the inequities within the financial industry? Obviously, you stumbled into financial reporting, but you took it really far. What made you want to do that for people who are kind of just, you know, average everyday people who might not know the intricacies of this industry?
Well, certainly a lot of my personal experiences have shaped my interests, but also understanding that there are a lot of commonalities in terms of what everyday average folks go through from a financial standpoint. And so I was a person who, as I said, I grew up in Los Angeles in a low-income household. My parents divorced when I was about 7 years old. My dad was a shoe shine man. My dad was originally from Harlem. And so he and my mother married in New York, and they came to Southern California when I was about 2 years old. I was born in New York, but again, my family relocated to Southern California. So my mom was a cashier. She was a secretary, and she struggled a lot, frankly, to raise us, to raise 5 kids, 5 daughters, if you can believe it, by herself. And so it was a huge financial challenge for her. You know, I remember my family being on public assistance. I remember us moving from, you know, one apartment to another. And so early in my life, I remember, you know, some of those struggles, but I also remember having this sort of 2-tiered world that I was living in, because I grew up in an era of busing in Southern California, where I was bused from my predominantly African-American and Latino neighborhood in Los Angeles, in the central part of Los Angeles, to very wealthy areas, to Brentwood, California, to Pacific Palisades, because I went to Canyon Elementary, I went to Paul Revere Junior High School, I went to Pacific Palisades High School before I ultimately came back and graduated from Dorsey High School in Los Angeles. So what I'm saying is that I had friends of all backgrounds and races, and in the era of busing, I wasn't like my kids had been, frankly, at up until very recently, in an area that was predominantly white. I was in a school system that was initially predominantly white, affluent, but because of busing, so many students were brought in. I wasn't the only one, right? So it was pretty much like 25% Black, 25% Asian, 25% Latino, and 25% white. And we all mixed and mingled. We all got along very well, et cetera. And so seeing that and seeing my friends who were like, oh, hey, you want to come to my pool party? Or, you know, my dad's a doctor, et cetera. And knowing like, wow, this is kind of how the other half lives. It did inform my sense of knowing that people in my local neighborhoods were struggling. And then there were other people who were doing quite well economically. So I think some of my interest in financial journalism, which is really exploring people's financial stories, giving them guidance and advice and insights into how to better manage their finances to live a better life. Some of that is in fact rooted in my own history and what I've seen, and now of course know that so many Americans face. You know, there's so much to be said and done to attack the problem of economic inequality. And I like to think that my role as a money coach, really a financial educator, is helping to, you know, chip away and bit by bit bridge that gap to help, you know, do my share. And it's a monumental task, of course, but to do my little small part in helping people to achieve financial freedom and to be able to close that wealth gap that disproportionately affects communities of color, women, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's very important.
Do you feel as though there's any gatekeeping within the financial industry? Is that why you sort of decided to share this knowledge with everybody?
There's definitely a huge amount of gatekeeping in the financial services industry. You know, I remember being a reporter who wrote about Wall Street and about investing and covered the brokerage business. And at so many levels, I would talk to, you know, thousands over my career. I talked to thousands of financial experts, traders, money managers, CFPs, financial advisors of all kinds, CEOs, et cetera. And, you know, part of my job was to translate what they were saying, was to take all of the financial jargon, all the legalese, all the Wall Street lingo out of it so that the average person could understand it and could act on what in many cases was good advice. Well, in many cases though, it was in the favor, it was to the advantage of those who had the knowledge, who had the resources, who had the access, who had certain skills that the average layperson didn't have. It was to their advantage to kind of obfuscate, to kind of keep things shrouded in mystery, because if it's oh so complicated and if it's oh so mysterious and so difficult, then of course I need to be the person to do that for you. I need to be able to get paid a fee or a commission, et cetera, to manage, to explain, to delegate, et cetera. And I think that part of what we've seen in recent decades, certainly the last 10 plus years or so, with this emerging trend toward do-it-yourself, financial controls, where people want to trade for themselves, or people want to learn how to manage their own monies, et cetera. It's been a growing trend, but even more now with fintech, with financial technology and tools and apps and services, that people can feel empowered, that they don't feel like they always need a middleman. I'm of the mindset and the belief that people actually do better when they have financial advisors, when they have trusted, professional, quality, reputable financial advisors. When you have a team, basically, in a lot of ways to help you, whether that's with your taxes, with your personal finances, your investments, your estate planning, whatever that kind of needs you might have. I think in general, people do better, kind of two heads are better than one. But at the same time, I do think there's a need for a lot of us, especially women, especially people of color, to take the reins and to not abdicate financial responsibility or to abdicate control completely to someone else. Because part of what happens is that so many people think, oh, that's for them. That's for the white males to handle. or that's for, you know, my father, my spouse, my brother. You know, a lot of women sometimes think that, oh, all that Wall Street and investing stuff, that's for the guys to handle. No, that's not true at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm super excited to be representing in a lot of ways, to be representing women, to be representing African Americans, to be representing educated people who say, okay, I'm going to learn this money stuff as well. It's not rocket science. We all can learn how to do this and do it well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably speak, we could probably speak to a lot of college students' experience in that money is, it seems like a very scary, elusive thing.
Yeah.
But the way that you explain it, it just seems like so much more obtainable and manageable. So yeah, your work is very important. And that leads us to our next question, actually. You do a lot of things. You're a money coach, you're a business owner, you're a journalist, you're a radio personality, amongst, you know, many other things that you do on a daily basis. How do you manage all of those things? Like, what does your daily schedule look like?
So I definitely do not do it alone. So, you know, a lot of times people have this, you know, superhero myth, you know, this myth of the, you know, powerful Black woman, or, you know, the superwoman syndrome. That ain't me. Okay. So I have an absolutely phenomenal husband. I have a partner and an equal in all regards, and we jointly run our company together. So my husband, Earl Cox, who is a book publisher and a business manager and an agent, and, you know, he described himself as sort of, you know, having, you know, 25 roles, because he does have 25 roles. He's managing our websites. He's negotiating deals on my behalf. He's, you know, running scheduling. He's hiring contractors and vendors for us, et cetera.
Wow.
So people see me because I have a national brand as the money coach, and I'm front and center in terms of being the kind of spokesperson for our company. But that's just kind of the front end of things.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, there's a whole bunch of back end stuff that has to get done, whether it's technology or operations or staffing or distribution, you know, or legal work and whatnot. And that's where the amazing Earl Cox comes in, and all of the vendors and partners and contractors that we hire. For our company itself, it is literally a 2-person company. We built it that way by design. It's just him and I. However, yes, we do have support staff. I have an amazing assistant. I have a number of freelancers, contractors, tech folks, and others that help us to build and grow our business and to keep on top of things.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the idea of your scarf, just having ties and keeping people within your orbit that can help, you know, run the ship, basically, because that's so important. Like, I couldn't do this without Sydney and like
same.
our team that we work with
Yeah.
the welcome table. It helps to have help.
With my husband, Earl, and I, that's, you know, one of the things that frankly I'm most proud of. I have a lot of, you know, successes. I'm a New York Times bestseller. You know, I've had a lot of great experiences. I've had my company for 17 years. And, you know, we've done some great things. People see me on, you know, pretty much every TV show out there, you know, Dr. Oz, Oprah, you know, Good Morning America, all that good stuff. I have 15 books, but I'm most proud that I have a happy, healthy, successful marriage and partnership with somebody I love. And we've been able to raise 3 wonderful children together. That's my biggest success in life.
That
Wow.
is wonderful. That's a huge success.
That's such a huge success. Congratulations. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. You know, even in my own business, when I talk to people about personal finances, I don't just say the good, I tell the good and the bad. So let me just tell very, very quickly the other side of it. I first got married right after grad school, far too young for me at the time. So my first marriage did not work out. And in a lot of ways, I chose wrong. And so, you know, having had an experience that was not ideal and that didn't work out, and then having a husband who it worked out beautifully and who I love and adore and who's my forever husband, I know the difference, of course, now. And again, I encourage women in particular, especially as you're coming out of college, because I met my first husband, you know, when I was a student, when I was an undergrad in college. choose wisely. It can make a huge long-term difference for you personally, professionally, financially, and otherwise.
Write notes, y'all.
I know.
This is important.
I'm
Yes.
like, we need to have a separate Zoom call just to
Exactly.
talk about
Just on that one, yes.
Yeah, no, this is something that we always talk about, work-life balance, because we know that it's not just, it's a whole pie, you know, it's not just a piece of the pie. And it's hard to, quote unquote, have it all, but to have good members on your team, especially a great partner like you, and a great bond like you and your husband have, is so instrumental to general success.
Yes,
That's right.
success. And, you know, speaking more about your general successes, your journalism career, you know, I don't know, did you feel as though the field needed certain areas, or certain areas of the field need to be diversified? Were you swayed either to one side or the other at any point in your career?
Well, for me, certainly financial journalism, we definitely have a need, but really throughout all of journalism. I mean, if you look at organizations like NABJ, where I've been a member for over 25 years, there are just critical shortages of people of color in newsrooms across America. And that's to all of our detriment. It means many stories are not getting told, or the lens through which they're being told are very, sort of one-sided or very limited. And so, yes, I think that there's a lot to be done based on science-based journalism, financial news journalism, and other forms of media that are specialty areas where we need to have more diversity, more voices, more input. And the result, frankly, is better outcomes, better stories, more truth being told.
Especially in a moment like we are in right now, it's so imperative that journalists of color, Black journalists, are out on the field reporting what is really going on, because it's so easy to get things misconstrued when it's told through a lens that doesn't understand the true context of what's going on.
Right.
So, yeah.
You know, I know that kind of reminds me of actually you and your career, and how you were talking about like that sort of middleman, especially in terms of the finance industry. You know, when you get stories straight from the root, it just, I don't know, it breathes differently.
I went to USC, as I told you, for grad school. I interned at AP first before I got a job there at AP. Well, when I interned at AP, the riots broke out in Los Angeles. So I don't want to date myself too much, but go back to Rodney King, the videotaped beating of Rodney King, which prompted, and the acquittal of the officers in that case, which prompted the riots. Long story short, I covered the aftermath of the riots for AP, for the Associated Press. Fast forward, several months later, there was a symposium that was put on at a university in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And who did AP send? They sent me, little old Lynnette, who was, 20-something at the time, to go out to represent the organization and to speak about covering the riots and the aftermath of the riots, because I covered Peter Uberoth and the Rebuild LA campaign, et cetera. So as I think back about why did they do that, it was because I was either the only one or the only Black journalist in that newsroom at the time. There might have been one other, and I remember a photographer who was Black, et cetera. But in terms of having full-time journalists covering the riots in Los Angeles at the time, slim pickings, And so again, access mattered, being able to tell a story in a certain way mattered, et cetera. And so here we are, more than 25 years later, and we see so much racial strife and civil unrest in the wake of the George Floyd murder, and in the wake of killings like Breonna Taylor, and on, all these names. And we still don't have adequate media representation, and we still don't have police accountability, and we still have police brutality. So some of these things, again, obviously they've been happening for decades, for generations. But again, you need that persistent drumbeat. You need those voices to be able to tell those stories, to have access, to be able to speak truth to power in a way that otherwise probably wouldn't get done.
Exactly. As we have discussed during our conversation, you've had a very rich and varied career, and we wanted to know what has been your most memorable experience between you publishing, innumerable articles, writing books, being on television. What moment within your career has been like the moment where you said, wow, like this, I've made it in a sense?
I definitely have a number of very memorable achievements. Seeing my book Zero Debt hit the New York Times bestsellers list, that was definitely a high point. I remember getting on Oprah, and my husband Earl, got me on Oprah, and he wasn't even my husband at the time yet, but like I said, we worked together in so many different capacities. But long story short, we were there, and before I was about to go out, my sister Debbie said, "Oh wait, we have to pray." And so we all kind of like stood in a circle, and it was me, Earl, my sister Debbie, our publicist at the time. And then she started praying, and she was like, "Dear God, please let," and then she just went, "Ah," and then the waterworks just started.
Oh.
And we were just like, everybody, we were all like, we cannot believe we did it, and so I remember that moment very well. In general, having a thriving business and having longevity, having, a sustained impact, that I think from a professional standpoint is certainly one of the highlights of my career. And then just kind of putting in the work, like, every time I have an opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life, and when I get feedback and somebody says, "Oh, you know what, I read your perfect credit book," or "I took your advice and, your first home, and now, I became a homeowner," or "I learned how to invest," or something that they tell me they transformed their life in some way. That's always super meaningful to me and makes me feel good about the work that I do, and gives me even more incentive to keep up the work, and to keep spreading what I call kind of the gospel of personal finances.
What other gospel would you like, or words of advice would you like to be preaching to other individuals who, look up to you and who want to make it and have success in their careers?
I guess the main thing I would say is, don't let anybody kind of put you in a box, and don't let anybody impose on you their limitations, because so many people will tell you what can't be done and how it, won't work and how it's never been done, etc. And so, I think I'm not sure if it's an African proverb, but it basically says, the people or the man who says that it can't be done, shouldn't stay in the way of the man who's already doing it. It's like, how you gonna tell somebody something can't be done when they're like proving through their life and through their work that it is attainable, that it is doable. And so, sometimes we have a sense, especially when we're younger, or when we're just not quite as confident in who we are and what our mission and our focus is, we have this sense that, okay, well, maybe I should listen to, if somebody's telling me that it's only this way, or there's only one track, or there's only one path to do something. And then we internalize that, and then we act on that. So all of these things, what I'm saying is that don't let somebody, try to put you in one lane. I think the lane you should stay in is your enthusiasm lane. It's like, where do you have a passion? Where do you most want to be represented? Where do you most want to work and pursue, your life's mission? And if it's, multiple things, then go for it, So too many times we just let other people limit us. And I'm a person who like dreams big and who always wants to achieve more. And so when somebody tells me, no, you can't do something, my first thought is, okay, watch me.
I like that
Yes,
mentality, that attitude,
that energy.
Thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us. We both learned a lot. I know I definitely learned a lot about having teamwork, having a good solid team that you can fall back on and rely on, relationships, which I wasn't expecting to learn about today, but I'm so glad, because that really got me thinking about a lot of things. So relationship, success, what that means to you, journeys, like, thank you so much. This was a great interview.
Yes.
You're so very welcome, and continued success to both of you. And feel free to always reach out if you need anything, help, support, advice, mentoring, anything. Would love to be helpful to you.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of The Welcome Table, and a special thank you to Lynnette. We had such a blast talking to her. We learned so much about relationships, money, journalism,
everything.
Just all-encompassing interview. I feel very fulfilled right now.
Me too.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. This has been Tatum
and Sydney,
and we'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.